We should know.
Not on public access television.
Oh,
These letters are so insane to me.
uh-oh, somebody there has my initials. In one letter, somebody has my initials.
Is this,
I swear it's not me.
are we going to have a 20-minute? You want to do,
Yeah. DK.
do you want me to do this part later?
What part?
Like record a voiceover and then send you a picture clip of March and April calendar? Would that be, because I can whip that up at home and have it to you by tomorrow night. That way I don't see a point in them looking at me talk, telling them what's on the calendar, as opposed to doing a voiceover that has the calendar right there so they can mark their crap down. The visual part is what I was thinking.
Hey Brad, can you get that check?
Yeah. Hey, my name is Brad. I'm doing a mic check. I don't believe in God. I think that the fact that
Move around a little bit. I think there's getting a popping from it when you move.
I think the fact that it happened today, that the resurrection occurred.
Good check.
Okay.
It happened
My
today.
favorite color is purple.
What about the leprechauns? Do you believe in the leprechauns?
I saw a leprechaun on Wednesday over by the Cavender
You
booth.
guys ready?
Yes. Are they ready to play the voicemail?
Yeah, Brad, I believe your chair's creaking, so yeah,
I'll try not to move.
it's his chair.
Hey, we think it's the chair, not the mic.
Every time you move around, Brad, your mic really rattles. Have you got a good connection in here?
I move a lot.
I think it's that chair.
Probably need to switch chairs.
Where is your connector?
Yeah, it might.
I think maybe this is the problem.
Can we get a signal when the voicemail is done playing? Because we won't be able to hear it. And I need to know when
Okay.
to start talking again.
It's tangled up.
So essentially this lady's going to say, I really appreciate your feedback, but some of the things you said offended me. I just wish you could be nicer. And
You know what? Texas injecting intelligent design in their textbooks offends my conscience. Is that the right word? Did I use the right word? Conscience? Yes, there we go.
Do you feel love, Brad?
See, I was in public education, and I can't even pronounce the
Very.
word that I think I mean.
Well, okay then.
I'm offended
I mean-
when Mormons knock on my door.
Right.
Have Brad talk.
If the resurrection occurred today, I mean, it would be out tomorrow, published in every single. It wouldn't wait 70 years. You know, we wouldn't have start writing about it, start creating a religion about this fact. So that's pretty crazy.
Elvis was seen after his death.
Everybody ready?
ready?
I like sitting over here.
Are we going straight to voicemail? You're going to tell me.
I'll introduce it.
Stand by. 5, 4, 3.
And we're back with our panel of skeptics and atheists. And now we're on to our news segment. First up, we actually got a voicemail, so that's nice. We appreciate viewer feedback. I'm going to go ahead and have the studio play that now.
Hi there, my name is Judy, and I appreciate watching your show. It helps me to develop my critical thinking skills. On one note, I have a higher power, and it is an important belief to me. And I heard the brief conversation about higher power. My understanding of the show is that you said that the argument from ignorance was that was not about the belief in the higher power in particular. That's not what you're referring to. It seems to me that you were saying you have little problem with believing in a higher power. However, when you were giving examples of a higher power, both of those examples were patronizing. I mean, don't you think that I might have offense by those examples? Makes me wonder if the skeptics society or skeptics people are often oppositional or like to argue. And maybe perhaps you did not mean to offend me. I want to hear what you say on your program. I appreciate that type of program being broadcast and for me to watch. However, isn't it normal for me to close off my ears after someone has talked down to me? Thanks a lot. Bye.
So when I hear that, it reminds me of the anthropology professor we had on last time when he was talking about peer review in science journals. And he said that they will form a hypothesis and spend years to maybe months developing their idea, backing it up with proof, and then they submit a scientific paper, and then their peers will rip them apart and try to discredit it in any way they can. And the process he described as, quote, humiliating. And it really struck me because as a computer programmer, that's how our code reviews are. We'll spend a whole year working on something, and as you create something, you fall in love with it, flaws and all, and to where you'll defend the flaws just because you've spent so much time with it. You go into a code review and they'll rip you apart and say, this is wrong, you need to do this better, and it really hurts to hear people trash your cherished ideas. But in the end, you always get a better product. And that's just what this strikes me as, is no matter what we say to discredit it, it's always going to be offensive.
Religion is, by most religionists' mentality, not a product. It is a faith in something which should be respected. Although I personally find that to be bullshit.
Yeah. Well, it seemed, what I get from what she's saying is she appreciates our point of view, and I appreciate that, and she wants to hear critical things, but that she wishes we weren't so offensive. And that's a frequent topic of debate.
It's hard to be, no matter how polite one of us can try to be when discussing an imaginary figment of someone's imagination, it boils down to you're believing in something that there's no evidence nor proof of, and we are demonstrating or providing evidence against what you believe. Things that are counterintuitive or against her belief in a higher power, and most people will be offended by that. There's nothing we can do to really, I don't see, get around offending someone who wants to believe in Santa Claus when we show that Santa Claus is a lie or is a figment of their imagination.
We shouldn't be really worried about if we're offending our Christian viewers. This is a free thought show, so
If
we shouldn't have...
a Christian is offended because we point out all the fallacies in their religion, maybe they should think harder about their religion.
Yeah, you know, I'm not going to deliberately try to be offensive. I mean, I want to reach out to people and talk about these things on a reasonable basis, but I'm not going to go out of my way to be nice because I think that it's going to discredit my own views. I mean, what if they say something dumb and I'm like, well, I don't agree, but if that's what you want to believe, that's fine.
Pat them on the head and move on.
I mean, that's how we get creationism taught in the schools and prayer in the schools and everything else I'm against.
Well, Christians, you know, they have all these stereotypes and they have all these labels. So if you're an atheist, they think really negatively of you. If you say God damn too many times a day, they think really negatively of you. So,
Too many times? There's like a limit?
yeah.
You know what? If one
Probably.
missionary comes and knocks on my door on a Saturday afternoon, that's annoying. But when they somehow manage to do it 3 times in a row, I'm ready to start shooting.
Let's move on to our favorite segment, Letters from Billy Graham. Our first letter, I will read now. Dear Reverend Graham, does the Bible say that someday God will take our old bodies and remake them so they'll never grow old? I don't understand how that's possible since our bodies disintegrate after we die and hardly anything's left. What's you guys take on that? Good question.
It's true that our bodies disintegrate and there's nothing left. So
What do you think he would say in reply to that?
Don't worry, God's going to take all the little tiny bits of your body, put them all back together very carefully, and voila, there you go.
But how does he do that?
By the inherent definition of a miracle, it's functioning outside the established rules of physics. So there would be no definition which we could understand, which also is the definition of what God is for the most part.
The special pleading fallacy that I've come up with some special excuse why I don't have to prove how something exists.
Physics don't apply. That's why it's a miracle.
Yeah, it's magic.
Yeah,
Exactly.
magic. He did say that. He said, can we understand exactly how God is going to do this? No, not fully, but one thing is clear. We don't need to worry about this because nothing is beyond God's ability. If it's necessary at the end of time for him to bring together all the scattered molecules that make up our original bodies, he can do it because he is God. He is all-powerful. However, he may use some other method. God created Adam from the dust of the earth, and he can recreate us from the earth's dust also. And then every single letter, he always ends on save yourself by committing yourself to Jesus Christ. And in fact, some of these, I think, are made-up questions because they're specifically crafted in order to help him get his message of
They're
save
softballs.
yourself.
Yeah, I
there's
always
some-
took the assumption that he edited the questions.
Well, he may just get so many questions that of the certain percentage that are softballs, he could just pick from those.
Probably
Rather
so.
than the, do you have really good evidence for the resurrection? Well, we'll skip that one.
This one I like. Dear Reverend Graham, my boyfriend and I just broke up, and it's really crushed me. One reason is because when we started dating, we were both convinced that God had brought us together. But I guess it wasn't true, because now we're broke up. Where did I go wrong, and where was God in all this? So if you guys were talking to this girl, what would you give her as advice?
Billy Graham's advice or our advice?
Your advice.
Move
Either
on, young. It happens. There's a lot of fish in the sea.
Don't blame everything that happens on God.
If you're looking towards God to solve all the issues in your life, just the mere fact that he's not there, you don't have any help.
Yeah,
So
she thought
stand
that
up
they
and
were.
do this.
She thought they were brought together because God brought them together, and then they broke up. And now she's questioning her faith because why would God bring her together only to break them up again?
Maybe God is like Maury Povich. Brings him on the show. It's a big spat. They break up, and
It's all part of the
God
mysterious.
God gets a big
mysterious
kick out of
ways.
it.
Yes.
They probably had a good time together.
Yeah. I mean, God brought together Christians and lions. He can bring together all kinds of people, but that doesn't mean it's going to be good for you.
Didn't the lions eat most of the Christians?
That was
the
good
most
for the
part.
lions.
Okay.
What do you think he would say?
Um,
I'll read it.
I would just tell her that God doesn't exist and that she's probably
No, what do you think Billy Graham is going to say?
Billy Graham. I don't even know who Billy Graham is.
God has a plan.
Okay, we have to
He's
cut
a
that
great
out.
man.
Okay.
He's a man
All
with
right.
a plan.
Here's what he said. God was right where he'd always been, by your side, concerned about you and watching over you. The words of the psalmist are true. He will not let your foot slip. He who watches over you will not slumber. What am I saying? Simply this. No matter what comes our way, if we know Christ and are walking with him, nothing can ever happen to us that is outside his perfect plan. Many years ago, as a young man, I too was deeply in love, and like you, I was convinced God had brought us together. When she ended our relationship, I was heartbroken, and I couldn't understand why God would let it happen. Only later, when God brought Ruth into my life, did I realize that God had not abandoned me, but had led me to my wife of his choice. Isn't that interesting? Like, it's basically the, I can't remember the name for it, the stoplight thing, where you are, your ideas are reinforced by the positive things that happen, and you just try to forget about the negative things.
Right. Well, although it is also kind of trivially true to say that, whatever happens is God's plan. Like, I came together and God planned for the gardener to sleep with my wife. Okay, then,
If
then
it happened, it must be in his
yeah,
plan
then,
by definition.
I found God planned for me to find another wife, and God planned for her to die early, and God planned it, So if anything can be God's plan, it sounds like that's the same as not having a plan.
Unless it's evil, and then it's sin because we ate from the apple.
Well, that's the last resort.
Yeah.
Sounds like he's a Christian extremist. He really doesn't go try to seek out the understanding of anything, really. He just thinks God created everything. So then must be he's pretty ignorant.
Billy Graham is a nut.
Yeah.
We'll edit that out too.
Okay.
Dear Reverend Graham, can you give me even one reason why I ought to keep myself sexually pure? I'm 16 years old. I don't see why I shouldn't have the same fun as my friends do, no matter what my parents say. But I promised them I'd write you. So predictions on what Billy Graham is going to say to this poor
Says
girl.
send pics.
Yeah, well, no, I was thinking it'd probably go with don't do anything until you're married. But yeah, we know how well that works out with abstinence till
Abstinence
marriage.
only.
abstinence only. You're not for the abstinence only.
It's been demonstrated over and over repeatedly in every market it is put out in that it just fails.
And what happens instead?
They end up getting their freak on and they don't understand how condoms work, or they don't have them because no one's bothered to help them out, or their school doesn't have the big bucket of free condoms by the nurse's office.
Yeah, the lack of education around people with these kinds of beliefs typically, in my opinion, tends to promote things like herpes, AIDS, gonorrhea, because they don't know.
The STD rates are much higher in the Bible South, the Deep South, Alabama, Mississippi, the Florida Panhandle, than the rest of the nation, which also happens to be the most religious.
Yeah,
Baptist fundamentalists, they are the market that pushes abstinence only the most, and they have the highest rates of teen births and STDs.
Well, compared to other countries, the U.S. has STD rates that are hundreds of times higher among our teenagers.
I mean, I think just because you don't like it, I mean, a lot of people seem to think if they just keep it a secret that they won't find out. And I don't think they realize how much power the internet and television and radio has. They will find out. You can't keep things secret anymore. And you really need to educate your kids about how things work so that they can do it safely. And just trying to, I mean, I know when they're little babies, you want to protect them from everything, but after a certain point, when they get big enough, you need to educate them with enough facts to arm them to defend themselves when they're out there in the world and you're not around to protect them.
Billy Graham would probably make them feel more guilty about having sexual natural urges to go out and have sex at that early age. I just think that's wrong.
Guilt is a good weapon in
How
their
they keep
arsenal.
this whole thing rolling is guilt.
I'll probably start with KS, you ignorant slut.
Okay, here's what he said. Have you asked yourself why your parents are urging you not to go down the same path your friends are taking? It isn't because they're old-fashioned or don't understand the temptations you face, because they do. Instead, I suspect they're encouraging you to resist these temptations because they know the dangers you'll face if you give in to them. Some of them are physical. Almost every day I get a letter or email from someone who became pregnant or contracted an STD that will be with them the rest of his life. They never thought it would happen to them, but it did. That's pretty good advice, so yeah, I'm for that. But the dangers are also emotional and spiritual. God gave sex to us, and that's kind of messed up. And one reason is so that we could express our lasting love and commitment to our husbands and wives. That's one reason why God commanded us to abstain from sex without anyone other than our spouses. I'm in trouble. Well, no, actually, that sounded bad.
That did sound bad. You can't keep anything secret anymore.
Oh, no.
Thanks to the internet.
But when we treat sex casually, we destroy its true meaning. Don't let this happen to you. And then he goes into the whole save yourself through Jesus Christ.
You know what? Since I've lived in Arkansas, I can name 8 couples that married their high school sweethearts because they wanted to have sex and thought it was the one, and every single one of those couples have failed miserably. None of them made it more than 2 years.
Have you married yet, Ian?
Nope.
And how old are you?
30.
Okay. Most Christians get married so they can have sex. Like, as soon as
Yeah,
possible.
I didn't have that caveat in my contract, so.
Well, that's why the divorce rates in the more religious states in the U.S. are higher than in the less religious states, because that's one of the reasons people get married so early.
And they start having kids at an early age, and they can't support them. And most free thinkers, we don't have kids until later on. It's because we don't get involved in that kind of relationship.
So this gets into why I think religion is a bad idea, because here you have a clear example of how their system of determining what's true, the Bible and religion, has led to poor decisions. So often I'm asked the question, what's so bad about religion? I'm just going to believe what I believe, and so what? It doesn't hurt you. Well, your beliefs inform your actions, and the choices that you make are going to be based off of your beliefs. And if you believe things that are silly or not true or illogical, it's going to lead you to make poor decisions. And I feel like they're making poor decisions, not like dumb decisions like should I buy a Payday or a Nestle Quick, but like life decisions like I'm going to marry this person just because I want to have sex.
Well, you're not just thinking that they're dumb decisions. Our statistics show overwhelmingly that they're dumb decisions. Between the birth rates for the Christian birth rates, the STD numbers, the divorce rates, all these, I mean, these are numbers we can actually look at and show that, look, what you believe has led to this specifically. And we can show how it works and the chain of how it gets there. And you're right, it's just kind of stupid.
The last statistics I saw were Christians were like 29% divorce rates, and atheists were a lot lower, 21%.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a good example of how they're believing this because it's in the Bible, and it's screwing up their lives. And it's the same thing with say, being against homosexual marriage or gays in general. They believe it because of Leviticus, despite the fact that it has a bunch of other silly crap in it. They believe it because of that, and now they're going around hurting people, and it doesn't really have any basis in logic. And I just really feel strongly that if you base your worldview around logic, you're just going to make better decisions.
Well, and also it's not based on the Bible either. The Bible doesn't say that God's going to find a mate for you or various things. Although God did promise to give King David a bunch of wives if he would behave, and he did according to the Bible. But
I want my 70 virgins.
Doesn't the Bible specify if you need more breeding stock, as women were pretty much considered back then? You just found the neighboring tribe or village and kill all the men?
And sometimes God would even tell them where to go and get the women.
So at 4 p.m. today, we're going to roll down to Little Rock and get us some women.
We're going to
Okay.
take the virgins.
Okay, next letter. Dear Reverend Graham, how do you explain something like the earthquake in Haiti? We've really been saddened by what's happened there, and we just don't understand why God lets things like this happen. Do you have any answers? Signs, DK. Doug Krueger, is there something we should know?
That's a different DK.
Okay.
Donkey Kong.
If you want
So,
to replace God with the concept of nature and say that, well, they can't understand the natural phenomenon of the earthquake happening, so they say it's God. That's kind of what they're doing.
so earthquake in Haiti, and how could God let it happen? How do you think that Reverend Billy Graham is going to rationalize this?
His ways are not our ways. It's a mystery. Shut up and pray.
It's pretty predictable, isn't it? I haven't read it yet.
God's power works in mysterious ways, and He has to sacrifice a few for everyone in the world.
What about,
Something like that.
what is it that Pat Robertson said? Oh, deal with the devil. True story.
Yes, oh yeah. Where the Haitians made a deal with the devil to get the French out, and now Satan has come, or God is punishing them for that deal so many years later.
Yeah. So his answer, the first thing he gets into is how awesome they are for sending relief to Haiti, and he describes in detail how they're helping them. And then he says, for years I've pondered the question of why tragedies like this occur. I bet you have. And to be honest, I don't have a full answer. Really. What I do know is that we live in a broken world where evil and suffering often seem to gain the upper hand. The Bible traces this back to the rebellion of the human race, along with that of Satan and his fallen angels, against the authority of God. As a result, the Bible says the whole creation has been groaning as in the pains of childbirth right up to the present time, Romans 8:22. But the world won't always be like this. Someday God will intervene and Christ will return to change all this. In the meantime, even if we don't know why things like this happen, we do know what we're to do, save yourself through Jesus and help the people of Haiti, blah, blah, blah. So it's all our fault because we ate from the apple and we're sinners.
Interestingly, speaking of not having a full answer, there was a famous Canadian televangelist who went up to Billy Graham and said that he was having doubts, and he ended up becoming an agnostic. He left Christianity, but he was a famous televangelist or minister in Canada. And he said, well, Reverend Graham, how can you continue to tell people that the Bible's the Word of God and all, and so on and so forth? Because because of the scholarship that's been done, we know that many of these things are very unlikely, and that these weren't written by witnesses, and etc. And Graham said, I have neither the intellect nor the patience to investigate those issues.
Wow, that's scary. You'd think that's the underpinnings of their faith. That's the first thing that they should be looking into.
Well, I think he was looking into the treasury. That's a good reason to keep preaching in some people's minds.
That's what they tell people when their houses are being foreclosed on, but they're still tithing 10%, and they ask their preacher, what do I do? Well, if you tithe, then God will take care of you.
Now, I gotta wonder, all right, if this goes all the way back to the eating of the apple, so God is just sporadically gonna hold a magnifying glass over the human species and toast a couple of us here and there and shake up an island here or a hurricane there to punish us for something that happened way back in the beginning of creation. How does that make him a loving God more so than just a bully with a magnifying glass on an anthill?
I I don't know. He seems like an abusive father to me.
Right. That's kind of what I was thinking. He comes home and he's angry because and
They
smacks around the kids.
When Adam and Eve bit out of the apple, they didn't have a concept of good and evil. And so they didn't know that it was good and evil. So he's punishing us, the people who do know the difference.
In his infinite wisdom, can he not show us a better path rather than just killing a whole bunch of people and not leaving a message behind? Suicide people at least leave a note.
Well, that's a good point, because so many times we think it's okay for God to slaughter people in order to send a message. But suppose,
never a message.
What if President Obama said, I've solved our healthcare crisis, here's a perfect plan, but we have to predicate this whole plan. The way we get it started is we're going to line up 150 young children and shoot them. Right? But after, people would say, well, that's absurd, that's a horrible plan. But if, on the other hand, 150 young children get killed in a school or something by an earthquake, and they say that's God's plan, is, God can have those kind of plans where you start off by killing a bunch of innocent people.
Yeah, if God does it, it must be moral.
How about this? Maybe it's just easier for some people to accept that it was God than it is to think about what's really going on, or better yet, educate themselves on plate tectonics.
Yeah.
It's amazing how they go against the experts because they think that their faith overrides the opinions of experts.
Yeah. Well, I think that's all the time we have. So thank you guys for coming.
All right.
And we'll see you guys next time.